Hello there. There are a lot of great animation studios doing some very strong work these days. Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Laika, Aardman, Ghibli, Sony, and Illumination have all impressed me with what they've been producing these past couple of years. However, my personal favorite current animation studio is Blue Sky. I just find myself really anticipating what the next project is, and they managed to make some very creative and quite personal animated features. However, they're still a bit of an underdog studio, and I'm not sure why. Box office-wise, they're consistently successful, but the acclaim given to the likes of Pixar and DreamWorks Animation seems to elude them, even though they're just as good as they are. So I'm going to run through their entire feature film catalog and why I think they're a tremendously talented team of artists. Their first feature film was Ice Age, which is actually their only work inherited from another studio, as it was originally intended as a Don Bluth film at his studio in Arizona. However, after it was shut down, producer Laurie Forte brought the film to Blue Sky, with its co-founder Chris Wedge handling directing duties. The final result was a very funny and sharply written look at those prehistoric animals that we don't normally give attention to. While it embraces its cartooniness, the humor in Ice Age is very laid back. The back and forth between Sid, Diego, and Manny is very naturalistic, and that makes their eventual friendship through the course of the film that much more believable. Even jokes like Sid getting his tail on fire is played in kind of a deadpan way, in large part thanks to the animators, storyboard artists, and the voice acting. Meanwhile, a lot of the more cartoony humor comes with the scene stealer, Scrat. The official Blue Sky mascot, he gives a chance to the animators to embrace their inner Chuck Jones, and while he has no real impact on the story, his antics are worth waiting for. It's the Wile E. Coyote effect, where even though we want to finally see him eat that acorn, it's just funnier to see him fall flat in his face. The heart of Ice Age comes through with the baby they take on and try to return to his human tribe. It's in that character that we get to know Manny's history and why he is the way he is. The baby is not a MacGuffin, but rather a necessity to developing these animals, and is ultimately the bridge that drives them together. And how can I not mention the cave painting scene that gives a glimpse of Manny's past and gives more than enough reason for his tough exterior. It hits the emotional sweet spot and also succeeds in strengthening the character, and it only makes subsequent viewings even better as Manny is seen in a different light. When a movie's plot twists can positively impact repeat viewings, that's a good thing. For a first feature effort, Chris Wedge and his crew at Blue Sky really knocked it out of the park by creating a charming, thoughtful, and funny little adventure comedy. The sophomore film, Robots, was their first project to showcase the animation team's ability and willingness to recreate a specific artist's style with the computer. Anybody familiar with William Joyce's work will recognize his artistic sensibilities instantly in Robots, and it's understandable considering he was a producer, character designer, and production designer on the film. It looks spectacular. I love the little details, the robotic cities, and the inhabitants. One especially creative sequence is the transit system, which is one big Rube Goldberg device that transports our heroes all over Robot City. And need I mention the domino scene? And that sense of creativity is what the film is a celebration of, and it actually tackles other themes that are quite intelligent and subtly done. The idea of constantly upgrading and throwing away old ideas that might otherwise be useful is one quite prevalent in society, and Robots handles that in a strong way. In fact, tell me if this sounds familiar. An innovator known for his famous television persona of a kindly uncle finds his company taken over by executives who mainly money on the brain, and at one point think people don't want anything old and want to force everybody to upgrade to the newest technological marvel, resulting in a number of worthy individuals out of work and unable to cope. Anybody with knowledge on the history of animation will probably notice the parallels here. Robots was made at the time of the big shake-up at Disney, and then closing down their hand-drawn unit to focus primarily on computer-animated features. For a CG studio to make that point, albeit subtly, says a lot about how close-knit the animation community is these days, and how even computer animators have huge respect for the masters that came before them. So yes, Robots is in fact a big metaphor for the animation industry. And with Robots, it's not hard to see why Blue Sky, despite using the latest technology, tries to integrate classic art styles as much as possible into their work. Looking past the film's message, Robots is also very funny. The film got a lot of publicity for having Robin Williams' first major voice role since The Genie, and he portrays Fender with a lot of energy and bringing his usual sense of manic comedy to the role. Even obvious jokes like an extended fart scene and the use of a Britney Spears song are done to brilliant effect. The script has a lot of fun with the world it's created too. The opening montage showing Rodney growing up has some brilliant sight gags, and the visual jokes continue on through the film. This is the Bug's Life of Blue Sky, as it's the least talked about of their various works, but it is a well-made piece of animation with an intelligent message attached to it, and one that has more to say than people let on. Ice Age: The Meltdown was the first sequel to that franchise, and managed to keep the quality of the first film intact. While it may have gotten a little sillier than the last entry, it was still very funny. We get a sense of how much our trio has grown attached, and their conversations still have that snap to them. However, this one addresses the whole idea that these animals are, in fact, possibly close to extinction. Mandy's nervousness of how to address the situation to Ellie is nicely portrayed, and the two new possums that join our characters on this adventure are hilarious. The heart from the first film is still there, mainly in the form of Ellie's relationship with Eddie and Crash. There's definitely a sense of the three of them having grown up together, and the scene where we flash back to them adopting her is very touching. Meanwhile, Scrat is just as hilarious as he was the last time. This time, it's funny how he unintentionally migrates with the rest of the animals escaping the flood, all in pursuit of that elusive acorn. And his final scene is definitely one where you really cannot help but feel sorry for that little squirrel. Carlos Saldana had a lot of room to play with when making the sequel, considering how the previous one ended, and he did a good job of following Blue Sky's debut feature and launching the Ice Age sequels on a strong note. Moving on to that first adaptation, Horton Hears a Who, this is the first of what will be very personal projects for the people involved. After the release of the disastrous live-action film based on The Cat in the Hat, Audrey Geisel decided that the best route for all adaptations of her late husband's work would be animation. The team at Blue Sky was subsequently commissioned to make an animated feature based on one of his books. Thus, Horton entered production. The result is a film that looks like Dr. Seuss's illustrations perfectly translated to 3 dimensions. It looks like opening a pop-up version of Horton, and great care has obviously been taken to depict Seuss's world and characters. This extends to the script, which while heavy on jokes, doesn't lose sight of the story's appeal. Horton is instantly likable, and Jim Carrey is having a ball of a time portraying him. I also like how the jungle and Whoville are expanded on. We see more of the inner workings of the Whoville government system, and even more of where JoJo comes from and how he relates to the situation at hand. It's also interesting how both the Whoville citizens and the jungle animals are equally uncertain and ignorant of the world outside. The kangaroo is a particularly menacing villain, and a perfect metaphor for those unwilling to accept new ideas and look beyond their own bubble. That she is the sort of person that does exist in real life is all part of the satire that Seuss placed in his works, and it's nicely translated here. Despite expanding a very short book, it does not feel like there's padding just to meet the 90-minute mark. Admittedly, I could have done without the big musical number finale, and I still don't quite understand the anime scene, but as a whole, Horton Hears a Who is a delight. It's no surprise that Audrey Geisel would then commission the same writers to pen the screenplay for The Lorax. If it were not for Horton being so good, we would not be getting these new animated Dr. Seuss adaptations. And that's a huge credit to the artists at Blue Sky, who clearly respected his work and wanted to do it justice, and that Geisel trusted them with the material shows how dedicated they are to preserving an artist's original vision. Continuing the Ice Age series, the third entry, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, did start to show the cracks of this franchise, but there was still enough charm that it ended up a mild diversion. The films are definitely getting sillier at this point, but there were some funny bits thrown in here and there. One thing that cannot be said about the Ice Age movies is that they all look the same. Each one presents a different appearance in the design, the first being very jagged, while this chapter is more lush in its presentation. Of course, Scrat is fantastically handled. His new storyline of falling in love with another acorn-loving squirrel done to superb effect. He pretty much has the best scenes of the film, and while the main story involving Manny dealing with his pregnant wife is nothing special and somewhat cliched, it's an understandable direction for them to take the franchise. Now, the Ice Age series is actually quite an important part of Blue Sky's structure. They're the only films of theirs that are studio mandated, and because of it being a billion-dollar franchise, it's understandable that 20th Century Fox would ask for more of them. Their agreement with their parent company seems to go as such. We'll give you another worldwide smash with Ice Age, and in exchange, we get to make any personal project we like. Thus leading to a lack of influence on Fox's part about what goes into their other films, like Horton and Rio. Basically, here's $100 million, have fun, and go make whatever you want, how you want. Just give us an Ice Age movie in another couple of years. And certainly one of the most personal films is Rio. The inspiration for Rio came from its director's desire to make an animated film about his home country and city. While the Giuseppe Rocca cartoons are classic, they were more from an American's perspective. Having been born in Rio de Janeiro, Carlos Saldanha wanted to show the Brazilians' point of view of Brazil. The result is a wonderful work of patriotic pride and energy that only a director from Rio could have brought to the screen. This is 100% Carlos Saldanha's vision, and that adds to the heart and passion we see on the screen. The attention to detail is amazing, and not just from having the right street patterns and the Christ the Redeemer statue in the right place, but it almost seems like we're actually getting a tour of the city, which is understandable, as Saldanha did bring a lot of the artists to Rio to get the right flavor of the city. The music and excitement found there is right on the screen from the first scene, a brilliantly vibrant musical number that kicks the whole thing off with a samba co-written by Sergio Mendes. And that continues on while still developing the characters. Yes, it's a typical story of the boy and girl who don't understand each other at first and grow to fall in love, but Blue and Jewel are so likable and funny that it's easy to forget the formula of the story. I actually like how each musical number complements and showcases what make characters so unique, memorable and lively, whether it's Nigel's devilish pretty bird or the party atmosphere of Pedro and Nico's hot wings. Even the new cover of Mascanada is a perfect representation of Blue trying to learn how to break out of his shell and experience what the world has to offer beyond his cage. Even with the emphasis on the Carnival and lush atmosphere in Rio, Saldanha still devotes time to the more problematic areas of Brazil, like the favelas, orphans, and bird poaching. That makes Rio more than just a postcard, and rather a real portrait of the country and how it currently is. It is that knowledge of Brazil from a director who obviously feels passionately about the country he was raised in that gives Rio that personal touch, and the wonderful heart, humor, and energy it causes me to have a big smile every time I watch it, from the first musical number to the last. Ice Age Continental Drift was problematic, I'll admit. There were less laughs and more cliches in this entry, and the series is showing signs of tiring. Though I also have to admit that while a far cry from the tone of the first one, Sea Pirates is an inventive concept I never would have expected to enter Ice Age. However, as usual, the highlight is Scrat. Even though I was not particularly enthusiastic about the scenes with the main trio and Manny's family, every time that little squirrel was on screen, I was laughing really hard. Whether it's the opening sequence, his underwater trek, or him finding a hidden society of other squirrels, every scene with him was gold, and you can tell how much the animators have a lot of fun with putting him into many different and inventive positions. Yes, the rest of the film does not quite match up to those scenes, but it shows that even in their lesser projects, the Blue Sky artists still put a ton of effort into them, and the Scrat sequences in particular are major assignments for them. Now, I already went into great detail about Epic and why I think it's a near masterpiece, an almost 25-minute video. So go and watch that to see my thoughts on it. But to put it briefly, I still think it's one of the most imaginative animated films ever made, with a brilliantly constructed mythology, a fantastic set of characters, and quite possibly the best CG animated human in the form of the lead, Mary Catherine. To me, no other animated feature has captured the same size and scope of a Star Wars or Lord of the Rings as much as Epic. It is a major breakthrough in animation, and one that I think its stature will grow over time, especially as it's studied by animation students in the years to come. And now we reach the latest feature film, Rio 2. As a big fan of the first Rio, I was highly anticipating the sequel, and it did not disappoint. I found it just as energetic, hilarious, and passionate as the first film. With Rio de Janeiro already thoroughly explored in the previous film, Carlos Saldanha decided to expand and show the rest of Brazil, with heavy emphasis on the beautiful jungles of the Amazon. The film has multiple plot lines, but I think it managed to develop each one very well. They don't go the typical meet the parents route with Jules' father, and we even see him having great respect for Blue in the beginning. It's an understandable gradual slide in how their different worlds and ideals apart that leads to him becoming untrustworthy of him. Nigel's storyline is a particular delight, mainly due to the new character of Gabby the Frog. The animators and voice actress Kristen Chenoweth do a fantastic job of making her a memorable and lovable character. Her personality is hard to dislike, and she even stole the spotlight from Nigel. I would love to see her get her own spin-off movie one day, because she has the ability to carry her own film, and it would be great to see more of her on her own adventure. While the first film's musical numbers were very samba influenced, Rio 2 presents even more variety and style, and I actually think the sequel's soundtrack tops the first one. What Is Love starts the film on a high note with a New Year's celebration on the Copacabana, beautiful creatures with a fantastic kaleidoscope of colors, and Nigel's rendition of I Will Survive is an instant showstopper. I also like how it's a natural extension of the first film. While the Ice Age series are fairly disconnected, you could watch Rio and Rio 2 back to back, and it would feel like one wildly entertaining 3-hour movie. The sequel expands on Jules' feelings about humans that was briefly mentioned in Rio, and we now understand why. It also continues the theme of bird poaching from the first film, with the loggers here destroying the animals' homes. It seems when people hear about a film having an environmental message, they assume it's going to be preachy. Rio 2 is not preachy. The loggers' plotline is a natural part of the environment, because, as was established in the first film, Rio shows the wonder of Brazil, as well as the less admirable traits. It's about birds in the Amazon, so it would be off-putting if they did not include that storyline, as it would be the same as completely ignoring that it happens. It's not like they pulled this idea from thin air. Armadillos and other South American animals are an endangered species because of actions like those seen in Rio 2. That the Rio series includes these real-world elements in what is essentially a love letter to its setting is what sets them apart from other animated franchises. So now begins the anticipation for the next Blue Sky release, an adaptation of Peanuts. However, this is not a project that some studio executive decide to do because it's a classic property that can print money. This is a movie that the Charles Schulz estate commissioned Blue Sky to do, and it's being written by his son and grandson. According to the film's producer, Paul Feig, there won't be any modern or pop culture references. Charlie Brown will not be rapping, and Snoopy won't be using an iPhone. It will be completely faithful to the classic comic strips and their characters, and as a result, I think this will be another Toy Story 3 and Lego movie, and how it will appeal to multiple generations with respect for these brilliant creations with a perfect understanding of why they've lasted so long. When this project was announced, people were worried that the computer animation would give them a pseudo-realistic look, and it would not look like Peanuts. However, based on their previous work, I knew it would respect the original art style while translating it to computer animation. I wasn't sure how, but I knew they would. And then the teaser was recently released. That's perfect. That is exactly how Peanuts should look, and they've captured that fantastically. And that is why Blue Sky is a fantastic animation studio. They have an immense respect for artists, the personal tales they wish to tell, and a fantastic story sense. Their films have a great sense of energy and understand how to make memorable and great animated films that work for all ages. In this current golden age of animation, they stand at the top of the pack, and I salute you, Blue Sky Studios. Keep on imagining and bringing your passion to the screen.